morning and happy Sabbath. We're so glad that you could join us again this morning, and we're going to start off with some songs. The first one is going to be Give Me Oil in My Lamp. Give me oil in my lamp, keep me burning. Give me oil in my lamp, I pray. Give me oil in my lamp, keep me burning. Keep me burning till the break of day. Sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna to the King of Kings. Sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna to the King. Give me gas in my Lord, keep me trucking for the Lord. Give me gas in my Lord, I pray. Give me gas in my Lord, keep me trucking for the Lord. Keep me trucking till the break of day. Sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna to the King of Kings. Sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna to the King. Give me wax on my board, keep me surfing for the Lord. Give me wax on my board, I pray. Give me wax on my board, keep me surfing for the Lord. Keep me surfing till the break of day. Sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna to the King of Kings. Sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna to the King. Our next song is I Have Peace Like a River. I have peace like a river. I have peace like a river. I have peace like a river in my soul. I have peace like a river. I have peace like a river. I have peace like a river in my soul. I've got love like the ocean. I've got love like the ocean. I've got love like the ocean in my soul. I've got love like the ocean. I've got love like the ocean. I've got love like the ocean in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. Our next song is I Just Want to Be a Sheep. I just want to be a sheep, ba 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 ba. I just want to be a sheep, ba 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 ba. I praise the Lord, my soul to keep. I just want to be a sheep, ba 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 ba. I don't want to be a Pharisee. I don't want to be a Pharisee. 'Cause they're not fair, you see. I don't want to be a Pharisee.
make you fishers of men.
I will make you fishers of men, fishers of men, fishers of men. I will make you fishers of men if you follow me. If you follow me, if you follow me. I will make you fishers of men if you follow me. Hear Christ calling, come unto me, come unto me, come unto me. Hear Christ calling, come unto me, I will give you rest. I will give you rest. I will give you rest. Hear Christ calling, come unto me, I will give you rest.
Let's have prayer. Dear Jesus, thank you for this day. Thank you for all that you've done for us and for giving us Sabbath each week for us to spend extra special time with you. Please be with each of the families that are watching this. Please keep them healthy and safe and bring us back together soon. Please bless our Sabbath day today. Amen.
Good morning. It is so glad to see you again. And hopefully it's not going to be too much longer. I keep saying that, but I'm hoping it won't be too much longer before we can be together again here having Sabbath School. So this morning I'm thankful for Ellie and Sierra Anderson and Miss Harley that are helping me today. And Sierra is going to have a mission story for us today.
Good morning again. Do you remember a few weeks ago when I told you a story about a man in the country of Peru? That man, remember, he had hurt his leg and he ended up coming to a medical clinic where some classmates and I were working, and he was able to get some bandages for it and we were able to help it get better. Well, I want to tell you another story about that place today. And that story happened on the same trip, but it's about a little boy. And that little boy, kind of like you, lives with his family. And he likes to play outside, and it's nice weather there to play outside often. It's kind of like it is here in Virginia now a lot of the time, kind of 50 or 60 degrees, and sometimes, well, very often it rains in the afternoon, so sometimes there are rainbows over the whole valley, and it is so pretty up there in the mountains. And so this little boy likes to play outside, and he likes to explore and to look around and find different things. And that's what he was doing when we went to that place on our mission trip. Now, he lives with his family in a little hut, and this hut had some problems with its roof. And so sometimes when it would rain really hard, that rain would come through the roof and their stuff would get wet. So they were really, really trying to make their house better. And throughout the day, his dad would try to work on it, and his dad would, try to accomplish his job as well, along with trying to fix the house. And the little boy would just play. And one day, we went to build a church out in front of their house. Now, there was the big mountain, and then there was their house, and then in front was the valley, and that's where we were building the church. And so my classmates and I got there in the morning, and we started putting out supplies and everything. And my job was to work with a couple of my classmates to dig a big hole for the bathroom. And so we were digging, and there were so many rocks. And we would hit them with the shovel and sparks would fly everywhere. And we were working and working and working, trying to get the hole dug. And the little boy was out exploring as usual. And he came over and he started looking. And he started asking us about it. And a few of our teammates spoke Spanish too, and so they talked. And he was telling them all about everything he was doing. And we just kept working. And now we had to keep building there for almost 2 weeks. And that little boy would keep coming, and he would come and visit, and he liked to watch, and sometimes he liked to help, and he would get the stones and he would move them over. And one day he found a he decided he was going to save it, and he started telling us about why he was saving it. Now, if this little boy is saving coins, he wants to get something probably. And just like that, I'm sure you've tried to save for things before, or think of something that you really would like to have. Well, this boy was saving for something that I'm pretty sure you haven't saved for before. He was saving for a bed. And that's because he didn't have a bed, and he wanted something soft to sleep on. And so each time he saw a coin, he would save it, and he would keep it all together. And he told us about it. He said, I'm saving for a bed, and he was excited. And we hadn't thought about that because we have beds, right? We have comfortable places to sleep, and we don't really give much thought about it. But this little boy didn't have a bed, and he was saving very hard. So while we were there, we were able to help. When we found a coin, we gave it to him so he could save it, and we were able to give him coins so that he could get his bed. Now, I want you to remember when you go to bed tonight how comfortable your bed is, and how some people, some little boys, instead of looking for toys, they look for beds, and they're saving money for it. And so we can be so grateful for what we have. And if you ever get a chance to go and travel and do a mission trip, you can be with the people and get to know them and get to know the things they're saving for too.
Thank you so much, Sierra. And it is one of the most exciting things you'll ever do if you get to travel and do mission trips. Well, last week we learned about Noah building the big ark. And remember, he was building this ark away from water. And remember, it never says that he ever built an ark before or a boat of any kind. But God chose him to build an ark away from the ocean or a body of water. And do you know, God chose him because there weren't very many people on the face of the earth at that time that were willing to do anything that God wanted them to do. And Noah was willing. And Noah started building that ark. Maybe he wasn't the most qualified. There were probably boat builders that lived near the ocean that built big boats, but God didn't choose them, or maybe they didn't say yes to God if he asked them to build a boat. So remember, Noah was 600 years old when he started building the ark. I can't even imagine starting to build an ark when I am 60 years old. But 600 years old, the number one quality that God saw in him was that he said, okay, God, if you want me to do this job, you're going to have to help me do it. And that's the number one quality that God wants all of us to have. If he asked us to do something, he'll give us the power to do it. So just remember, listen to God, and he will give you the ability. Now, Ellie Anderson's going to come and tell us the rest of the story.
Have you guys ever known someone that's 600 years old? I haven't either. That's really old, huh? Well, that's how old, like Miss Harley said, Miss Noah was when the ark was finally finished. During the years Noah and his helpers were building the ark, people were so busy doing whatever they wanted that they ignored Noah. Some things that they were busy with weren't very bad things. They got married and had children and built houses, but they also sacrificed people on altars and worshipped false gods. They disobeyed God in so many ways. Finally, God decided he had seen enough, and he said something to Noah. What do you think it was? God said that he was going to send floodwaters. Water would cover the whole earth and destroy every living thing. Water had never covered the whole earth. This was all new to Noah. But Noah knew God would take care of all those who chose to believe in him, even floodwaters could not hurt those who chose to follow God. Finally, the ark was finished, and then God said, Noah, go into the ark and take 7 of each clean animal and 2 of each unclean animal.
Some people may have laughed at Noah and made fun of him. Some of them stood outside the ark and listened to Noah say once more, "Come into the ark. You'll be safe inside." Suddenly there was a sound of rushing wind. And a bunch of birds came flying out of the forest, 2 of every unclean bird, and 7 pairs of every clean bird. In an orderly fashion, the birds flew in past the door and disappeared. I imagine the laughing stopped when they saw all the wild animals coming everywhere. There were lions and elephants and giraffes and bears and snakes and butterflies, kittens, armadillos, wombats, kangaroos, and every kind of animal that God had ever made went into the ark. One last time, Noah invited the people to come in, but they didn't come. Some of the workers probably almost decided to go into the ark, but then their friends probably talked them out of it. So Noah and his wife and his 3 sons and their wives went into the ark. The big door creaked and then closed with a loud thump. No hand had touched the door. Noah hadn't closed it. His sons hadn't closed it. Who do you think closed the door? That's right, it was God. For 8 days, Noah and his family waited inside that hot, stuffy ark. The people outside probably laughed more and made fun of them. But water began to fall from the sky. The flood waters washed over the earth. Lots of water. There was even lightning and thunder and more lightning and more thunder. Fountains of water shot up out of the ground. Stones and trees probably flew everywhere. Some people probably held on to the outside of the ark and knocked, trying to get into the ark. Hey, but it was no use. In that horrible storm, which lasted 40 days, almost 6 weeks, everyone and every living thing outside the ark died. As the great ark was lifted up by the waters, the ark rocked side to side. It must have been a great relief when the storm calmed down and the ark floated quietly on the water. While Noah and his family were inside the ark for months, they had a lot of work to do. Imagine what a mess those animals made. Pens and stalls needed to be cleaned. The animals needed food and clean water. The ark was a giant floating zoo with only 8 workers. The family members worked together efficiently. They did it cheerfully, thankful to be alive and cared for by God.
Thank you, Ellie. How would you have liked to be on that boat? Now, I love animals a lot, but remember last week, someone figured it out, not me, that there were probably 45,000 animals on that boat. Can you imagine taking care of all those animals? All the water that they need, all the food that they need, and then cleaning up after them. I just don't know how they did it. And they did this every single day, probably more than once a day, because some animals eat almost all day long. And I just can't imagine taking care of all those animals and everyone being in that same boat. It had to be a miracle, for sure, for all those animals to be in there and to get along. So Miss Harley, if you would come up and read to us from Leviticus 11, verses 1 to 24.
The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron. He said, "Tell the people of Israel this. These are the land animals you may eat. You may eat any animal that has split hooves completely divided and choose the cud. Some animals only chew the cud or only have split hooves. Don't eat these animals. The camel chews the cud but does not have a split hoof. It is unclean for you. The rock badger chews the cud but does not have a split hoof. It is unclean for you. The rabbit chews the cud but does not have a split hoof. It is unclean for you. Now the pig has a split hoof that is completely divided, but it does not chew the cud. It is unclean for you. You must not eat the meat from these animals. Don't even touch their dead bodies. They are unclean for you. Some animals live in the sea or in a river. If the animal has fins and scales, you may eat it.
But some animals live in the sea or in a river and do not have fins and scales. This includes the things that fill the water, and it includes all other things that live in the water. You should hate them. You must not eat any meat from them. Don't even touch their dead bodies. This is because you should hate them. You must hate any animal in the water that does not have fins and scales. Also, some birds should not be eaten. They should be hated. You must not eat any of these birds: eagles, vultures, black vultures, kites, or any kind of falcon. Don't eat any kind of raven, horned owls, screech owls, seagulls, or any kind of hawk. Don't eat little owls, cormorants, great owls, white owls, desert owls, or ospreys. Don't eat storks, any kind of heron, hoopoes, or bats. Don't eat insects that have wings and walk on all 4 feet. They are also to be hated. But you may eat certain insects that have wings and walk on 4 feet. You may eat those that have legs with joints above their feet so they can jump. These are the kinds of insects you may eat: all kinds of locusts, winged locusts, crickets, and grasshoppers. But all other insects that have wings and walk on 4 feet are hated. These insects will make you unclean. Anyone who touches the dead body of one of these insects will become unclean until evening.
Thank you very much, Melissa. And do you know, God knows best, doesn't he? Since I've become a nurse, I have a little bit more of an idea why we should and shouldn't eat certain things. But before I tell you a story, here are some pictures. Remember the animals that we can eat, the clean animals? Cows, chickens, elk, goats, of course sheep, they're okay. All of these things, buffalo, all of these things are clean because they chew the cud and they have split hooves. Now the things that are unclean, which we're not supposed to eat, and these are only a few, of course my posters can't be big enough to put everything. Remember all the different types of owls, vultures, eagles, ravens. These are unclean. Can you imagine eating a dog? We don't eat dogs here, but in a lot of countries they do eat dogs. When we were in Fiji, we said, where are all the dogs? Because we had a veterinarian with us, and we were looking for dogs and cats that are usually running all over, and the people said, we eat them. We have not much to eat, so we eat them. Can't imagine. And bear, lions, foxes, all kinds of things. And you know, it is okay to eat things like grasshoppers. Have you ever eaten a grasshopper? When we were in Peru, a different trip than Sierra was on, we were in a place called Iquitos, and it was along the river. There were not very many things to eat, and it was cut off from every place else in Peru. You had to either go by boat or you had to fly in by an airplane. And a lot of times the sky was just too cloudy and the runway was really, really small. And so they would fly 2 hours from Lima and get ready to land, come down through the clouds, and they were too far on the runway, and so they had to go all the way back to Lima. They only had one try for some reason. I think they didn't have enough fuel. And so in this place, they couldn't shop or get many things in, and it was very expensive to get food. When we first got there, about the second day, they took our whole group down, and the director said, now in case any of you get really hungry and get tempted to eat things that you know aren't clean, he said, I'm going to take you to the market, but don't even touch anything. And we went down, and there were monkeys all sliced up, and every animal had the head of the animal on top. There were big boa constrictors, snakes, and all kinds of things that I had never seen, even dolphin. And there they have blue dolphins. They even had those cut up. And I just can't even imagine wanting to eat any of that. There were flies all over them, and it stank horribly. Some kids actually felt sick. Well, we had a couple boys on our trip, that thought, oh, we know better than those directors. And a couple of them dared one of the boys to eat something that was on a rotisserie. And that's something that keeps something hot and kind of toasts it slowly. It was a giant maggot. And I can't imagine eating a maggot. And since I've become a nurse, I know that maggots eat dead tissue. I've found them actually on some of my patients' wounds here in the United States, but nothing like this. This was a giant maggot, but I didn't see it. When we all got back to the place that we were staying, in the evening, someone knocked on my door and said, Miss Harley, a certain boy is sick. He's got a high fever. So I took my thermometer and checked it. It was 102, which is really a high fever. And he was shaking and he was so sick to his stomach. And I said, what happened? Did you not drink any water all day? And he's like, no, I had water. Tell me what happened. And then one of the boys from the background said, he ate a maggot. We dared him to eat a maggot. And I thought, makes perfect sense. So I said, well, I guess you found out that it's not good to eat maggots. They're not on the list of clean things. So I did have to give him some antibiotics. And he threw up a couple times, which is probably the best thing that happened. And the next day, he was a little bit better. And then the following day, he was able to join us on the trip. But when God tells us something, he's not trying to hold things back from us that are good for us. He wants us to not get sick, to listen, to not have to deal with other things that other people have to. And since I've been a nurse, I found out that people that eat a lot of pork have a very, very high rate of heart disease and, well, pretty much every disease, but especially cancer and heart disease. So when God tells us something isn't the best, let's listen. And anything that's in the Bible you know is true. And it has been proven by medical science now that it's been a long time since he told us that. So here are some scenarios. Think of ways that you can get together and help these situations. And remember, as people of God, we can work together to help people. And so, you've been invited to your friend's house. Her room is a mess. Her mother says that she can't play until her room gets cleaned. What would you do? Well, I hope that you would quickly help her clean her room. That used to happen to me all the time when I went to my friend's house. And I'd say, let's just get it cleaned up quick so we can have longer to play. And if she did it by herself, it would take her forever. But the fact that two of us were there and we knew we got to play, we got it done really fast. Okay, here's another one. You and your brother have begged for a pet. Your parents keep saying no, but you keep begging. Finally, they let you get a cat. As a family, you have to decide who's going to clean the litter box every day. What could you do? Now, I hate cleaning cat litter boxes. That's one reason we don't have an inside cat. If I had to clean that every day, I wouldn't really want a cat inside. But you could clean it, couldn't you? If you really wanted that cat, that's part of having the cat. And it's sure better than cleaning up after all the animals on the ark. So here's another one. Someone told you that the father of one of the kids in your class has died, and your classmate hasn't been back to school in a couple of days. What do you think you and your classmates could do? I hope that you would think of possibly sending him a card or calling. And then when you came back, make sure that you actually don't act strange around him. Invite him to do things with you, and hopefully he will have a chance to talk if he wants to or not. And you can be a good support. When we work together, we're showing our love for God and for the people and the animals that he created. It's much easier to do things together, isn't it? When we go on a mission trip, it's not just one person usually that goes. We take a whole group of people because it usually is really hot and we're not used to the heat when we get there. There's a lot of strange food and we're not used to working or speaking the language and working in a place we don't know anybody. But when we work together and we have people that live there, they are so happy to see us and they will help us in every way, including translating what we say. When we work together, we can do things for God better than we could do it ourselves. We can deliver homeless meals. We can clean up people's yards, visit sick people that are sick, and right now we have to look through windows or have things delivered to them, but hopefully soon we'll be able to go sing again to the older people and cheer them up and make cards for them. So don't be afraid to do something new or something to help others. And our memory verse is, work together as a team for the faith. Philippians 1:27. Remember, it's always easier to work together. It's always more fun, and you can even a lot of times sing, and time passes really fast, and the job gets done, and maybe better. And you don't have to be the most talented person. You just have to be willing when God calls you, because He has promised that He will help you, and He will give you the talents, the strength, and everything that you need to do the job He's asked you to do. So let's pray. Father in heaven, help us this week to think of people that we can help, that we can be a blessing. And when you give us ideas, Lord, we pray that you would give us the strength and the wisdom to do, just like Noah and other Bible characters. And thank you that we don't have to be perfect or know a lot to be able to work for you. We just need to be willing, and please make us willing. In Jesus' name. So this week, see how many people you can be a blessing to. See you next week.